Hello and welcome everyone to this another episode of Unlearning the Falsehoods. We have taken some time off from this series very recently because uh, I have been recovering from a sore throat. As you can see, it will be very evident from my voice that I was having some difficulties, but nonetheless, I have recovered enough to speak again. So, here is the next episode. I guess this is the 18th one in this series of Unlearning the Falsehoods, where we will bust some myths that were taught to us in the name of history and culture in our schools. All right, so a brief recap about so far what we have established in this series is there were a few Islamic scholars who learned the theories of Wahhabism from Makkah. They came over here, the philosophy of Deoband that also developed specifically in Bharat. That philosophy combined with the philosophy of Wahhabism, it was spread across this geography of Bharat, and there were people who were convinced. Okay, so let's not stay in this mode of pretending that no, spread of this message had no actual and real life effect on the ground. Obviously, when you spread a radical and fundamentalist philosophy, there are bound to be consequences, and that is what we are going to discuss in this episode of this series of Unlearning the Falsehoods is, and more particularly, we are going to focus on an individual who goes by the name of Sayyid Ahmad Khan. All right. So, up until the 1857 revolt, it was widely believed that the society existed as a one consolidated unit. Okay, although there are there are scholars and leaders who will dispute this, but let us assume, for the sake of argument, that up until the revolt of 1857, the society of Bharat was one consolidated unit. Okay, that is, again, we are assuming. I'm not stating it outright as a fact because there are no substantial evidence to corroborate this, but let us assume that society was one consolidated unit. All right, now how did this idea of two nation theory solidify? Meaning, in essence, the Muslim leadership in Bharat managed to convince the mass of the Muslims of the idea of a future perception of this country. Okay, now the society was fragmented into two parts, meaning that there were the non-converted natives, and then there were the converted natives. Okay, so the converted natives were led to believe and made to think about the future perception of this country after the British leaves. Okay, now these two perceptions were different. Okay, the converted Muslims of Bharat, they were made to believe that if in the future, if in the foreseeable future, British leaves, what will be the perception of Bharat? And this perception of Bharat inside the mind of Muslim and the perception of Bharat inside the mind of a non-converted native were different. Okay, hence that resulted into the two nation theory. But how did it come to it? That is the whole point of this video. All right. Now what happened was, this particular individual, Sayyid Ahmad Khan, he is like looked up to by the Muslim community in Bharat as a beacon of liberalism, meaning he was the person who advocated this idea of liberalism in the society of Bharat. Okay, let's see what Sayyid Ahmad Khan has written in his own words. We are only going to look at his own words, not our words. So let's see. Okay. All right. So Sayyid Ahmad Khan, he wrote a book. All right. He wrote a book, and the book was the name of Causes of Indian Revolt. And the revolt that he's talking about here is 1857. So he wrote a book, Causes of the Indian Revolt. In that book, okay, these are his words, not mine. Let's see what he had to say. It was supposed that when government had similarly brought all Hindustanis to a pitch of ignorance and poverty, it would convert them to its own creed. Okay, so he was beginning to become conscious about the fact that indeed the British were here to convert. Okay, there was no commercial interest in it, and he became conscious of the fact that yes, indeed the British were here to convert. Okay, The missionaries, moreover, introduced a new system of preaching. They took to printing and circulating controversial tracts in the shape of questions and answers. Missionaries did not confine themselves to explaining the doctrines of their own books. In violent and unmeasured language, they attacked the followers and holy places of other creeds, annoying and insulting beyond expression the feeling of those who listened to them. All right, yes. So, this is what I have been so far saying, that the core aim of colonization was conversion. It was not, as we are led to believe by our history textbooks, that the core aim of colonization was profit, capitalism, and whatnot. Definitely, those things were there, but those things were the byproducts of their aspirations to convert more and more people. So this is Sayyid Ahmad Khan saying in his books that indeed colonizers were over here. They were preaching the message of Christ in schools. They had set up rural schools because majority of the population, the mass of the population, was stationed in the rural areas. Okay, so what they were doing was they were setting up rural education institutions. They were going from, you know, so they had hired the natives. They would hire some of the natives. They would train them. They would send them across door to door to urge the parents of the children to send their children to the rural schools and learn the message of Christ. Okay, these are his words, not mine. Okay. Now here is the genesis of the idea that we very widely have in our country, that it is because if you see, majority of the youth to this very day aspires to be in the service of the government. Okay, so from where did this idea of this obsession with being employed by the government, where did that inception of that idea take place? Okay, so these are the words of Sayyid Ahmad Khan in his book. Let's see. If the people were not satisfied with this course of education, why did they let their children go to schools? The fact is that we have no question of like or dislike. On the contrary, we must account for this by the painfully degraded and ignorant state of people. They believed that if their children were entered at the schools, they might have employment given to them by the government and be enabled to find some means of subsistence. So during the time of colonizers, when the British were here, the only method, the only way that you could escape poverty and get a sustainable living, okay, get a sustainable subsistence, was by getting into the employment of the government. To this very day, we still seem to live under this false pretense of getting in the employment of the government and hence living a successful life. Okay, so this is where it all started, because those were the only avenues of employment at that time. Next up is the another work of Sayyid Ahmad Khan that it was a long essay that he had written, and the name of that essay was "The Loyal Mohammedans of India." Okay, herein he has discovered this, or rather, he has solidified this idea of Muslim Christian brotherhood. Okay, up until so far, I would like to imagine and I would like to say that majority of the society functioned as a consolidated unit, as a one single unit. Okay, but Sayyid Ahmad Khan, he had made a few trips to Britain as well. He was educated in English. He had developed this ideas. He had developed his ideas. He had bettered his understanding about the English language and the English people. So he came up with a few theories. Okay, and here is where you'll see how the mass of the Muslim community was divorced and deconsolidated from a unified mass of the natives, and there was this mutual alliance of convenience between the Christian colonizer and the converted Muslims in Bharat. Okay, now these are his words, not mine. I'm quoting from his words. So let's see. There was this book written by Sayyid Ahmad Khan. The name of that, or rather an essay, the name of that essay was "The Loyal Mohammedans of India." Okay, his words, not mine. At that momentous crisis, it was imperatively their duty, a duty enjoined by the precepts of our religion, to identify themselves heartily with the Christians and to espouse their cause, seeing that they have, like ourselves, been favored with a revelation from heaven and believe in the prophets and hold sacred the word of God in his holy book, which is also an object of faith with us. Verily, such unworthy Mohammedans have well deserved the righteous indignation of all the right thinking men. Okay, so here he is drawing a parallel between both the major monotheistic traditions, or rather, as we address them as Abrahamic faiths. Both the faiths, Islam and Christianity, they come out of their holy revelations from the God to their prophets. So, since Sayyid Ahmad Khan, he was very much educated in English, and he was rather convinced of this fact that there would become a time in future that British would have to leave this country. And when they leave this country, if at all we manage to establish democracy, how would that democracy function? Because he was acutely aware of the fact that the mass of the populace is still the native, okay, still the pagan. Not many have managed to convert. Okay, so here he is establishing a nexus between the Christian and the Muslims, the Christian colonizer and the Muslim converted Muslims of Bharat. So, and he is spreading this message across the length and breadth of this country. Okay, again, there was this clear mutual beneficial alliance between the both, and keep in mind, parallelly, the conversions were still going on. Okay, so at that time, according to Sayyid Ahmad Khan, and by that extension, the people who followed him, the people who subscribed to his ideology, their perception of future of Bharat, okay, their perception of future of Bharat was very different from the non-Muslim natives' perception of Bharat. This is the clear divide. This is the bedrock of the two nation theory. All right, that and the seeds were sown for this theory way before, right after the death of Aurangzeb, as we have discussed in the previous videos. But this is actually the solidification and crystallization of that thought, because the perception of future, okay, the perception of future for two different sections of the populace were very different. Okay, now it was Syed Ahmad Khan who was advocating this cause of mutual alliance between the people of the book and the isolating the native. His words, not mine. Okay, next up is to do the background work for his preachings. Syed Ahmad Khan, he came up with this idea of Aligarh movement. A lot of educational institutes were set up to propagate this idea of syncretic anglicized Wahhabism, meaning the language would remain English, the means and the tools would remain English, but the core philosophy, or the driving force driving force behind this movement was Wahhabism and Deobandi. Okay, so he set up a few institutions, Mohammedan Anglo Oriental College, that we like to call it today, that today is known as Aligarh Muslim University. So there were institutions found for the dissemination of such ideas and principles of anglicized Wahhabism. And there is a very interesting an anecdote about this particular individual, Theodore Beck. Okay, Theodore Beck was a British person, who was a British national, who became the first principal of the Aligarh University. Okay, he had bought into this idea of Christian-Muslim mutual beneficial alliance of convenience, and trying to isolate the natives. All right, so let's see what he had to think. Okay, let's look at some of his writings. What has he written, and what he thinks? Okay, now Theodore Beck, here he is writing about the Congress demand for democracy. Okay, this is happening in 1893. Okay, almost 30 years after 1857 revolt, and there was this infant demand of Congress for a democracy in Bharat. Okay, so Congress demanded democracy. So the Muslim leadership was of the opinion, like I said, they had completely changed the perception of future. The perception of future for non-converted natives was different. The perception of future for Muslim natives was different. Okay. Now here is Theodore Beck, the first principal of Aligarh Muslim University. These are his words, not mine. Okay. Muslims can have no sympathy with these demands. It is imperative for the Muslims and the British to unite with a view to fighting these agitators and prevent the introduction of democratic form of government, unsuited as it is to the needs and genius of the country. We therefore advocate loyalty to the government and Anglo-Muslim collaboration. Okay, so here common sense dictates that if two people are forming an alliance, okay, against whom is that alliance pointed towards? Okay, if the Christians and Muslims, they were making an alliance of convenience, they were making an alliance of convenience against whom? That is something I would leave to your imagination and to your thinking. Uh, these are his words, not mine. Okay. Again, uh, this fellow Theodore Beck. Okay, he goes on to deliver a speech in London in 1895. Okay, these are some excerpts from his speech that would clearly highlight the difference in perception of future. How had this, this chain of events starting from Dehlevi to Barelvi to this Sayyid Ahmad Khan, how there is the continuum of thought and how it led to this divided perception of future. Okay, his words, not mine. A friendship between the British people and the Muslims was possible, but not between Muslims and the followers of other religions. For example, the followers of Shivaji and those of Guru Gobind Singh would never agree with the Muslims in accepting Aurangzeb as their hero. Clear distinction between the perception of future. Okay, this is an Englishman saying it. This is not a native person with a right wing bias saying it. Okay, one more thing. Muslim behavior during and after the revolt of 1857 had warned the community against agitational politics of the Hindus, and they were now wisely acting on the advice of Sir Syed. It was the advice of loyalty to the British. His words, not mine. And the last one. Muslims were opposed to the holding of competitive exams in India, for they knew that this step would mean the replacement of many impartial British officers by the anti Muslim Hindus. Okay, so there was this clear distinction. They had managed to convince the mass of the converted natives to subscribe to this idea that our perception of future nation under a democracy would be different as compared to the non-converted natives' perception. So this is the solidification of the two-nation theory that had been continuously watered by Dehlevi, then Barelvi, then Ali brothers, and now Syed Ahmad Khan. Okay. So that's about it in today's video, in this episode of Unlearning the Falsehoods. We have also come up with this. It's an older idea of ours, RAD files. Okay, this is a research report. We publish it on our Instagram profile. Do check it out. There is also another post coming up on the same. So keep watching our Instagram space for more such content, and thank you for watching.